Change de panneau. Eh bien, bonsoir à toutes et à tous. Merci de nous rejoindre pour déjà ce troisième live des City Talks Live. Aujourd'hui, on est avec Kartik. Kartik est à la Maison de la Suède. C'est un grand animateur de la cité. Il a montré de nombreux projets. On lui doit entre autres Cité Innovation pour le plus récent, avec de belles choses, comme par exemple des conférences autour de l'entrepreneuriat, de l'innovation, de l'empowerment, aussi des travaux autour des imprimantes 3D. Et puis un petit peu plus, de façon un peu plus ancienne, il avait également participé à une magnifique exposition de photos avec des portraits des résidents dans les maisons. Donc voilà, un grand acteur. Je suis aussi très actif à la Maison de la Suède. Bonjour Kartik.
Bonjour Tanguy, comment vas-tu?
Bah bien bien, en ces temps confinés, voilà, on est tous confinés, mais
Oui,
la cité n'est jamais loin de nos cœurs.
absolument, tout à fait. Et
Alors
bonsoir
aujourd'hui,
à tous et à toutes.
voilà,
Oui,
très bien.
bonsoir
Aujourd'hui, tu vas
bonsoir.
nous parler d'entrepreneuriat. C'est ta grande
Voilà.
passion, c'est un de tes grands sujets. Qu'est-ce que tu fais dans la vie? Qu'est-ce que tu fais comme étude?
Donc à base, je suis ingénieur, mais ensuite j'ai fait un master en économie et en psychologie. Et actuellement, je suis en thèse où j'étudie les impacts d'une nouvelle technologie, c'est les technologies des véhicules autonomes. Donc je fais une thèse CIF chez Renault. Et je suis en train d'étudier les impacts et comment les véhicules autonomes vont être utilisés.
Des
Et
véhicules autonomes dans le milieu professionnel, dans le transport quotidien des personnes, dans les transports en commun, dans tout, un champ particulier.
dans les logistiques urbaines, en fait, est-ce que c'est possible que demain on commande un truc chez Amazon et on a un véhicule autonome qui vient nous livrer le colis? Donc, c'est mon question. Mais l'entrepreneuriat m'intéresse également beaucoup. J'avais trois startups. Donc, j'ai essayé avec trois startups et ça m'a pris toujours beaucoup. Et l'idée après ma thèse est de continuer avec l'entrepreneuriat.
Très bien. Donc, nous verrons peut-être des flottes de drones autonomes nous livrer des colis grâce à toi. Ou à moins qu'il y ait un club de chasseurs urbains qui se mettent à chasser les drones comme, comme les pigeons en campagne. Donc, bah voilà, je te propose de débuter. Je vous dis bah, bonne présentation, bonne à notre public, et puis eh bien, on se retrouve à la fin. Voilà, je te laisse les mains du dispositif. Bon
Ça
live.
marche. Ça marche. Merci Tanguy. À tout à l'heure. Et and since it's a talk in English, I'll just switch back to English. Hi, good evening, welcome. Thanks for joining in and hope everyone is doing well during these extremely strange times. I felt that these circumstances seem particularly adapted to a question in French. I will try to respond to questions as I speak instead of all at the end. Regarding the content, this live session has four parts. I start by very briefly discussing our collective conception of work or profession or vocation. Then for the second, third, and fourth parts, almost in response to the first part, I discuss the themes of entrepreneurship, innovation, and impact. Each part will be built largely on one or more books. So let's begin. I'll just set something up really quickly and we're ready to go. So what is work? How did it get here? Our conception of work conjures up the 9 to 5. The 9 to 5 is a product of, just a second, some technical issues. Yeah. The 9 to 5 is a product of the Industrial Revolution where workers, due to the assembly line, had to start and stop at essentially the same times. Though at the beginning they worked for at least 10 hours, often 14. Then there were some reforms and we arrived at the 8-hour day. On the slide, Barry Schwartz raises some interesting points in his TED Talk, Why We Work. According to him, he asks, why is it that as capitalism developed, it created a model for work in which opportunities for non-material satisfactions that might come from it and inspire better work were reduced or eliminated. Indeed, now with the information age, various differing ideas have become popular. An example is the 4-hour work week. So some of you may be familiar with this book and with Tim Ferriss and this extremely interesting book. Tim Ferriss proposes a way, or he posits that we may be able to just work 4 hours a week and earn enough money. At the city, most of us are about to start their careers or are at the beginning of it. We are literally looking to work for the next 3 or more decades. According to some estimates, we have about 80,000 hours in our career. So this is a session about what will we do with it. I'm just going to once again handle some technical stuff. It's true that it's kind of complicated dealing with, because I'm relaying my video to someone who's relaying it to you. So Tongi is the mastermind behind all of this. And okay, perfect. Here we go. So now, after this realization that we are at the beginning of our careers, our question is, what will we do with it? And my response to that is, what about entrepreneurship? When we think about entrepreneurship, we often have an image of something like this. This is what an entrepreneur looks like. It's a flashy profession, it's a flashy job, you make a lot of money, you wear suits, it's a high power, high energy environment, and you feel like the world is your oyster. But the truth is, the truth could not be more further away than that. And I'm going to introduce one of our major books in this section, which is called Shoe Dog. So this is a memoir by the founder of Nike, Phil Knight. And this is the most honest and human attempt about creating a business that I've ever read. This book details what a path to business success really looks like. It's a messy, perilous, and chaotic journey riddled with mistakes, endless struggles, sacrifice, doubt, insecurities. And you almost feel after every page that the company will definitely end in failure. For example, this is a quote from the book. Phil Knight is interviewing for a job after he's made a trip around the world, and his father puts him in touch with a friend who's the CEO at a New York Stock Exchange company. And he in response to Mr. Frisbee, he says, I don't know what to do about or with a job or career or my life. So Phil Knight's essentially admitting that he has no idea about what to do with his life. And this is the founder of Nike publicly stating that there was so much doubt and insecurity about his life. That's what business often looks like. We don't know what's happening. We don't know where we're going. Coming back to the book, there's some really interesting quotes. So Phil Knight goes from Buddhism to Hinduism, talking about the Upanishads, where, for example, the Upanishads say, lead me from the unreal to real. So these are all actual real quotes from the book. He quotes rabbis, he quotes the Persian poet Rumi, he quotes Voltaire, he quotes Zen masters, all in reflecting that there's so much more to business than just making money. In fact, he even has advice for us. He says that I tell men and women in their mid-20s not to settle for a job or profession or even a career, but rather seek a calling. And he says that even if you don't know what that means, seek it. If you're following your calling, the fatigue will be easier to bear, the disappointments will be fuel, and the highs will be like nothing you ever felt. And now we come to entrepreneurship. So now from entrepreneurship, we come to innovation. So what is innovation? So you have a new idea, and that's what I broadly refer to as innovation. Innovation is hard to pinpoint. It is sort of a fuzzy concept with various ideas on what it actually is. Even the kind of innovation that is important to us in the context of entrepreneurship is diverse. And I've taken once again a few examples of different books which deal about innovation, which speak about innovation. One of the first books is Zero to One. Peter Thiel is, for example, the co-founder of PayPal, and he's invested in more than 150 startups like Airbnb, Tesla. This guy knows startups in and out. One of the most interesting quotes and interview questions from this book is, what important truth do very few people agree with you on? This question may seem simple, but once you start reflecting on it, you'll realize there's actually a lot going on. What does 0 to 1 mean? According to him, this is how he explains it, and I think it's a pretty interesting way to look at business. He says that every moment in business will happen only once. The next Bill Gates will not build an operating system. The next Larry Page won't make a search engine, and the next Mark Zuckerberg won't create a social network. Doing what we already know how to do takes the world from 1 to n, adding more of something familiar. But every time we create something new, we go from 0 to 1. He says that today's best practices lead to dead ends, and the best parts are new and untried. He also has some relative progress, which is copying things that work. In the other graph on the right, you have what technological progress looks like, which is 0 to 1. And then you have what globalization looks like, which is just copying things one after the other and taking things from 1 to n. And for him, real progress, vertical or intensive progress, is going from 0 to 1. This is just one of the many takes on innovation we have. Another really interesting and seminal example of what innovation comes from this book called The Innovators Dilemma. This was voted as one of the most important books in business ever written. And what it says is, its message is really, really interesting. First of all, Clayton M. Christensen distinguishes between sustaining versus disruptive innovations. Sustaining innovations are those innovations which make things a bit better. For example, if you have a computer today and it has an i5, tomorrow you can buy a computer which has an i7 for basically more or less the same price. But what is a disruptive innovation, and how does it deal, and how is it linked to sustaining innovation? So let's look at this graph here. So on the y-axis we have performance, and on the x-axis we have time. Now here he distinguishes between two kinds of markets, or two parts of the same market. So the red line that we see on top is the higher end of the market, and the red line that we see at the bottom is the lower end of the market. Now the incumbents, which are already established, which have the superior product, are focusing on sustaining innovations. That means that they already have something which is really good, and a lot of customers are buying it. So once a startup enters with a disruptive innovation, so let's look at time A, and let's look at time before time A. So once a startup introduces a product, its performance isn't even good enough for the lower end of the market. So the incumbents have nothing to worry about. At time A, the startup actually manages to serve the lower end of the market, which is the least profitable. At time B, the disruptive innovation is getting better, but it's still not good enough for the higher end of the market. And at time C, it actually breaks even in the sense that now the disruptive innovation is good enough for the higher end of the market, which is the most profitable. And this graph basically describes the process of disruption. So the process of disruption is occurred at time C, where the startup can actually successfully overtake the incumbent by proposing a disruptive innovation. An example is Netflix. So when Netflix was launched, it wasn't launched for wasn't launched for the movie buffs who wanted to see the latest movies. It was launched for people who didn't mind waiting to look at releases at a later time. Also, when it was launched, it was really slow, so it took really a long time, and it didn't offer brand new hits right away. So blockbusters are a different kind of customer that rented more on impulse and prioritized new releases, and therefore ignored Netflix. But over time, the technology in what Netflix offered got so improved so much that it disrupted Blockbuster. What's also interesting to note is innovation doesn't just mean creating new products. Sometimes it means just creating new business models. In October 2007, roommates and former schoolmates Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia came up with the idea of putting an air mattress in their living room and turning it into a bed and breakfast. So what's really interesting about Airbnb is it's a platform. It does not own any real estate listings. It acts as a broker, and it receives commissions for each booking. So in October 2007, all they had was an air mattress in their living room, and in October 2019, 2 million people were staying with Airbnb each night. Now, how can we apply this notion of innovation to entrepreneurship? I'll describe this in strictly economic terms, and I'll describe it in the terms of market equilibrium. So for our explanation, we adapt the example of, let's look at what happens at the checkout lane in the supermarket. When we arrive at the checkout at the supermarket, it usually takes at least a moment to decide which line to choose, between which cashier to go to. The decision entails some difficulty because the lines are as an equilibrium of almost the same length. So we're always looking for the shortest line. This equilibrium occurs for the simple and natural reason that all people arriving at the checkout are sequentially choosing the shortest line. So there is no line which remains short for long. The principle of equilibrium, which we see in the checkout line, applies to the economy more generally. As business people choose what line of business to undertake, as well as where to expand or contract their existing business, they, like customers approaching checkout, pick off the best opportunities. This too creates an equilibrium. Any opportunities for unusual profits are quickly taken off the table, leading to a situation where such opportunities are hard to find. This principle, with the concept of equilibrium it entails, lies at the heart of economics. So now we've discussed entrepreneurship, we've discussed innovation, we've discussed the link between entrepreneurship and innovation. Now my question is, once we have a business, once maybe we have an innovative business, what do we do with it? So once again, taking a line out of the shoe dog, and this is also something that I heard echoed at many conferences which I attended regarding entrepreneurship and impact, that there's a difference between profit and purpose of a company. How Phil Knight describes it is that for human beings, we have to make blood, but making blood is just something that we need to exist. So he says, but that day-to-day business of the human body isn't our mission as human beings. It's a basic process that enables a higher aims. And life always tries to transcend the basic processes of living. So this is applying this analogy to business, that businesses have to be profitable, but that isn't their mission, or that isn't what they do. And to describe and go further into detail about this, I'll take the example of this very particular company. It's called Arvind Eye Care. Now, what's the strangest thing about Arvind Eye Care is that, okay, what Arvind Eye Care is it's a system of health clinics which offer eye care for free or at subsidized costs. Most of the surgeries that they do are completely free. And just to give you an idea of how many surgeries they do, I'm going to just go and show some slides. This is what the fee structure and patient breakdown looks like. I know this slide is very data incentive, but bear with me and I'm sure you'll figure this out. So they do cataract surgeries, and 27% of all of their cataract surgeries are free, and 26% are minimal payment. That means 53%, or the majority of the patient type, are either free or highly subsidized, which means they're offering surgeries at between $0 to $17. Some of them are also regular and premium, where people choose to pay all the amount they can. Consultations are also free. Only for paying patients do you pay 50 rupees, which is close to $1. And this 50 rupees is not just a one-time consultation fee, but it's valid for 3 months or 3 visits, whichever occurs first. Okay, it's interesting that they do this kind of surgeries, but just how many surgeries are we talking about? So, to give you an example, Arvind now sees more than 4 million patients a year, which means that more than 2 million surgeries, cataract surgeries, are done at free of cost. The total outpatient visits were 55.4 million since the conception of Arvind. As you can see, it's been growing kind of exponentially. The graphs I have here end in 2012, but the data that's available is still 2018. Now, they can offer all of these surgeries, but are these surgeries any good? In a study, they compared Arvind, they compared the Arvind Center at Coimbatore and the NHS of UK over 23 variables, and they found that the NHS of UK was better in all of three, which means that Arvind, at 1/10 the cost, was better at 20 out of those 23 variables, which are as important. Okay, so they can do a lot of surgeries, and they can do it at very good quality while providing a lot of free surgeries. But the question is, do they actually manage to make it profitable? And as this graph shows, that they were basically turning a profit of about 10 million US dollars in 2010, and now in 2018 the profit's closer to 20 million dollars. Now the question is, how do they manage to do this? They manage to provide innumerous surgeries at excellent quality at almost free or minimal rates while making a profit. How is all of this possible? And this, I think, is a question of innovation. How were they able to innovate to be able to actually provide this quality at this cost? Arvind has numerous processes in place which make it an extremely innovative enterprise. Just to give an example, here is a graph of surgeon productivity between the US and India. So in the US, a surgeon would do maybe 100 to 200 cataract surgeries a year. In India, the number would be closer to 400. But in Arvind, each surgeon does over 2,000 surgeries per year. But that's just one of the ways they innovate and they make profits. They're in this high volume model. Another way that they do it is they actually set up their own manufacturing unit for intraocular lenses. Now they produce lenses at 1/10 the cost, and they've actually been making money because the quality of the lenses they produce is so good that they can export these lenses and make a profit selling those lenses. And with this, I come to the end of my talk, where I briefly discussed work, what we can do with our career, why entrepreneurship is an option, what the link between entrepreneurship and innovation looks like, and what to do with an innovative enterprise. What do you do when you have an innovative business? What is its purpose? And here are a few resources that can be really interesting. Even if you guys aren't interested in entrepreneurship, I'd really recommend checking out 80,000 Hours. So this is a collection of researchers who tackle the question of how to have the best impact with the 80,000 hours in your career. On Purpose is another such establishment which actually provides fellowships, where for a year you get you're fully funded, and you get to do a number of internships at various high impact institutions. Lastly, there's also this really interesting book called The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid, where C.K. Prahlad describes how the most poor people are not just a market, but are also an opportunity, not only provide an opportunity for profits, but also in turn provide an opportunity to serve them. And with this, I come to the end, and thanks and have a nice evening.
Eh bien merci, voilà. Eh bien merci Kartik pour ce magnifique live, cette présentation très complète, voilà, digne d'un vrai doctorant, d'un chercheur avec voilà des chiffres, des stats, des sources. Merci beaucoup. Je crois qu'on te retrouve dans pas très longtemps. On te retrouve demain midi pour une magnifique recette.
Absolument. À demain midi. Et merci.
Merci beaucoup Kartik et très bonne soirée et merci à toutes et à tous et à bientôt. Je crois qu'on se revoit vendredi. J'ai pas encore annoncé, mais voilà, on est prêt avec God of Ludo. On parlera jeux de société. Quels jeux de société à faire chez soi en étant confiné avec nos petits amis disséminés un petit peu partout dans les chambres, dans les couloirs d'à côté ou dans les maisons voisines. Très bonne soirée et encore bravo et merci Kartik pour ce joli
Merci
live.
Tanguy. Au revoir. Bonne soirée.